Griswold? Good old Griswold. I love him like a brother. We fought together, you know, back when we... Lazarus!
The villagers of Diablo 1 had suffered immensely for their part in the downfall of the Lord of Terror. Though some weren't merely slain where they stood, others were forced to suffer, even in undeath. In today's video, we'll explore how the blacksmith Griswold was not only instrumental in defeating Diablo, but also the terrible price he paid for his defiance in the face of another lesser evil. This is the tragic story and end of Griswold the Blacksmith. Griswold the Blacksmith is first encountered just to the right of the well in the town of Tristram. Like his name implies, he runs the smithy named Griswold's Fine Weapons, and when approached, we see he's a tall, broad man, bald with a beard and apparently has an injured right leg, as he's said to walk with a limp, though one would never know as he never moves from out front of his smithy. And perhaps his most memorable trait being his simulacrum of a Scottish accent, despite being from Candaris like the other villagers. When greeting the blacksmith, he will cheerily question,
"Well, what can I do for you?"
We then learn of Griswold's invaluable in-game function. Despite the town barely surviving the occupation of Hell's forces, he keeps his forge hot, and is willing to trade with adventurers, making sure they have sharp steel as he buys and sells weapons and armor, except for magic staves, and accessories. He also repairs damaged armor and weapons, at a price. It should be further noted in regards to Griswold's vocation, he will provide critical insight into the use of the weapons that he sells, such as, two examples being, the axe and its damage versus speed.
The axe? Aye, that's a good weapon. Balanced against any foe. Look how it cleaves the air. And then, imagine a nice fat demon head in its path. Keep in mind, however, that it is slow to swing. But talk about dealing a heavy blow!
And the sword's balanced approach to slicing flesh.
Look at that edge, that balance. A sword in the right hands, and against the right foe, is the master of all weapons. Its keen blade finds little to hack or pierce on the undead, but against a living, breathing enemy, the sword will better slice their flesh.
Plus, blunt weapons' ability to crush bone.
If you're looking for a good weapon, let me show this to you. Take your basic blunt weapon, such as a mace. Works like a charm against most of those undying horrors down there, and there's nothing better to shatter skinny little skeletons.
When speaking to the other inhabitants of the town, we learn of the life of the selfless blacksmith, as well as his trials and tribulations, and invaluable contribution to the town with his forge, as Ogden the innkeeper will praise Griswold's skill.
Griswold the blacksmith is extremely knowledgeable about weapons and armor. If you ever need work done on your gear, he is definitely the man to see.
Likewise, Griswold praises Ogden for keeping the townsfolk fed for the 4 years they've been occupied by demons terrorizing the countryside.
The innkeeper has little business and no real way of turning a profit. He manages to make ends meet by providing food and lodging for those who occasionally drift through the village. But they're as likely to sneak off into the night as they are to pay him. If it weren't for the stores of grains and dried meats he kept in his cellar, why, most of us would have starved during that first year when the entire countryside was overrun by demons.
Speaking further to Griswold's considerate side, most of the other townsfolk are afraid of the witch Adria, nestled in her hut. Griswold, however, isn't afraid to praise the witch's prowess in the arcane arts.
Well, I have to practically smuggle in the metals and tools I need from caravans that skirt the edges of our damned town. That witch Adria always seems to get whatever she needs. If I knew even the smallest bit about how to harness magic as she did, I could make some truly incredible things.
Adria in turn shows her respect.
To a man who only knows iron, there is no greater magic than steel. The blacksmith Griswold is more of a sorcerer than he knows. His ability to meld fire and metal is unequaled in this land.
Pebin the healer, too, praises Griswold's efficacy with his forge.
Griswold knows as much about the art of war as I do about the art of healing. He is a shrewd merchant, but his work is second to none. Oh, I suppose that may be because he's the only blacksmith left here.
And Griswold will save the healer.
A good man who puts the needs of others above his own. You won't find anyone left in Tristram, or anyone else for that matter, who has a bad thing to say about the healer.
Proving his dedication to the townsfolk, although busy with his tireless work creating weapons and armour, Griswold admits he wishes he could do more to help poor Gillian and her ailing grandmother.
Oh, Gillian is a nice lass. Shame that her gammer is in such poor health, or I would arrange to get both of them out of here on one of the trading caravans.
Gillian then praises Griswold's talents.
Our blacksmith is a point of pride to the people of Tristram. Not only is he a master craftsman who has won many contests within his guild, but he received praises from our King Leoric himself. May his soul rest in peace. Griswold is also a great hero. Just ask Cain.
Seems nobody bothered to tell Gillian what became of the skeleton King Leoric. Cain, who we were directed to by Gillian, then reveals a darker backstory.
Griswold, a man of great action and great courage. I bet he never told you about the time he went into the labyrinth to save Wirt, did he? He knows his fair share of the dangers to be found there. But then again, so do you. He is a skilled craftsman, and if he claims to be able to help you in any way, you can count on his honesty and his skill.
Griswold then compliments Cain on his storytelling skills.
Sometimes I think that Cain talks too much. But I guess that's his calling in life. If I could bend steel as well as he can bend your ear, I could make a suit of court plate good enough for an emperor.
Speaking of saving Wirt, the peg-legged boy has this to say about his rumoured saviour.
I guess I owe the blacksmith my life. What there is of it. Sure, Griswold offered me an apprenticeship at the smithy. He's a nice enough guy, but I'll never get enough money to... Well, let's just say that I have definite plans that require a large amount of gold.
Griswold touches on his time in the labyrinth and rescuing Wirt from the lair of a demon called the Butcher.
When I found Wirt, he was very near a room that sounds like the vile pit you've described. The stench of death was heavy in the air, and consumed as I was with getting the lad to safety, I did not go further than I had to. If he claims to know something of that place, I would not discount his word easily.
Congruently, as we learned it was demons that gnawed off poor Wirt's leg, we also discover Griswold himself has a bum leg due to his brush with hell, as when broaching the topic of what happened in the labyrinth, thanks to this Lazarus, it nearly breaks the drunken Farnham, who wails in a stupor.
Griswold? Good old Griswold. I love him like a brother. We fought together, you know, back when we... Lazarus!
Surprisingly, it was Farnham who saved the blacksmith during their fateful ambush at the hands of the betrayer Lazarus, as he recalls of the drunk.
I was with Farnham that night that Lazarus led us into the labyrinth. I never saw the Archbishop again, and I may not have survived if Farnham was not at my side. I fear that the attack left his soul as crippled as... well, another did my leg. I cannot fight this battle for him now. But, what if I could?
So, as we know, it was the Archbishop that lured most of the townsfolk to their deaths at the hands of this bloody butcher, while in service of his lord Diablo. Although the injury to his leg stalled Griswold's hero days, probably indefinitely, it never stopped his invaluable work on the forge, as perhaps the most pivotal of quests Griswold was involved with when battling the hordes of demons was when he tasks the hero with retrieving a hellish anvil from the forces of hell so he may forge us, the hero, an equally powerful weapon to battle the greater evil.
Greetings! It's always a pleasure to see one of my best customers. I know that you've been venturing deeper into the labyrinth, and there's a story I was told that you may find worth the time to listen to. One of the men who returned from the labyrinth told me about a mystic anvil. that he came across during his escape. His description reminded me of legends I had heard in my youth about the burning Hellforge, where powerful weapons of magic are crafted. The legend had it that deep within the Hellforge rested the Anvil of Fury. This anvil contained within it the very essence of the demonic underworld. It is said that any weapon crafted upon the burning anvil is imbued with great power. If this anvil is indeed the Anvil of Fury, I may be able to make you a weapon capable of defeating even the darkest lord of hell. Find the anvil for me, and I'll get to work.
We then find the anvil's guarded by a demonic blacksmith of hell's own making.
I shall crush you!
Time to die. I need to get this to Griswold.
And after successfully retrieving the forge and returning to Griswold, he thanks.
Oh, I can hardly believe it! This is the Anvil of Fury! Good work, my friend. Now, we'll show those bastards that there are no weapons in hell more deadly than those made by men! Take this, and may light protect you!
We're then gifted with one of the most powerful weapons in a warrior's arsenal, Griswold's Edge. Quite likely the blade that eventually cut through the Lord of Terror's armoured flesh, ending his reign of terror on the town of Tristram. As we know, the warrior, post defeating the Lord of Terror, took in his soul stone to try and contain his evil essence. But what became of the stalwart Griswold, who was directly responsible for aiding in the defeat of Diablo himself? After Diablo was slain in the catacombs beneath the town of Tristram, a grand celebration that lasted several days was held. The hero that defeated the Lord of Terror looked as if he'd walked through hell itself, and as the weeks passed, he kept his distance from the rest of the townsfolk and seemed to lapse into a dark, brooding depression. One day, he simply left, and shortly thereafter, Tristram was attacked by a legion of foul demons. While many of the townsfolk were merely slain, some were forced into cursed servitude. During the events of Diablo 2, when returning to Tristram, we find what remains of the townsfolk and the poor blacksmith, now little more than an undead sentry wandering the town he once protected. This grisly discovery gets worse as it's compounded by the fact the Lord of Terror no doubt sees the warrior's memories and knows it was Griswold who supplied the weapons that the heroes used to battle the burning hells. Congruently, it was Griswold himself who tasked the warrior with stealing the coveted Hell Forge. Adding insult to injury, it was again the blacksmith who crafted a weapon on the very Hell Forge potent enough to kill the prime evil. Such transgressions cannot be left unpunished. And suffer Griswold did. As the official Diablo 2 on Ariat Summit reads, the stout blacksmith Griswold was one of those who were bound past death to attend to the desire of the three. Wandering the town he once loved, he uses arcane powers and unholy strength granted to his twisted body by Andariel to stop any from following the path of the Wanderer. So he was killed and resurrected not by Diablo, but specifically is mentioned the Maiden of Anguish Andariel. But why? Why not just kill him? And how on earth are these two interconnected, and does their dispute hold a higher meaning? Well, interestingly, the answer may lie within the cut content for Andariel, specifically in Diablo 1. As many of you know, Diablo 1 had numerous cut quests removed before launch. These quests were nearly complete, featuring in-depth lore, voice acting, and both new and familiar monsters. Fortunately, with the Beelzebub HD mod, you can experience these quests today. One such quest was originally given by Jillian the barmaid, asking players to find missing villagers Anais and Roof. Notably, Jillian specifically mentions Ogden and Pepin as potential victims.
Beg pardon, but have you heard what has been happening? Some of the men have vanished from the village. Disa's sons, Aeneas and Roof, claim to have seen strange lights glowing deep within the woods a few days ago, but no one has heard from them since. I too have seen a crimson shimmering from beyond the ash groves, but I've been too afraid to approach it. I fear that Ogden or our healer Pepin may be next. Won't you please find out what has happened?
When speaking to Deckard Cain, he confirms Gillian's suspicions and also subtly casts doubt on the barmaid.
While the barmaid may seem a bit confused at times, it is true that men have been disappearing from the village. It reminds me of ancient writings about a demonic temptress called Andariel. Known as the Maiden of Anguish, her thirst for mortal blood was so great that she sought to learn a spell to breach the mortal realm. By seducing one of the dark sorcerers of the netherworld, Andariel took the knowledge she needed and so began to lure mortal men into her dark corner of hell. If these legends are true, she is not a creature to be taken lightly.
Adria the Witch mentions that Andariel has a strong preference for men.
The succubus is a demon that feasts upon the essence of mortal men. You will find that Andariel has quite an appetite. The town will soon be devoid of any adult males unless you stop her feeding now.
Indeed, we learn the grove where Andariel and her succubi reside was the only above-ground dungeon in-game, adorned with blood stars, the alluring lights that villagers spoke of. While battling Andariel, we find the corpses of villagers, presumably hapless men, lured to their doom. But what does this have to do with Griswold? Well, the plot thickens. When speaking to Ogden, he dismisses the rumour, having never seen the light himself.
Gillian has been going on and on about strange lights in the trees, but I haven't been able to make heads nor tails of her story. I certainly haven't seen any strange lights, and if I did, they would be the least of my worries.
Wirt seems eager to witness it.
No, I've been looking for those lights, but I can't find them. If Gillian says they are there, I believe her, but I have yet to see them for myself.
Well, what can I do for you?
However, the only villager who witnessed the siren's seductive shining stars was Griswold the Blacksmith, who had this to say.
I admit that I too have seen these strange lights, but I have not felt pulled towards them. I'll be sure to steer clear of them, and will tell everyone that visits here to do likewise.
Thus, Griswold is the only townsman who was not tempted by Andariel, which would have infuriated the queen of the succubi at the time. And this raises several questions.
You lure no more men to their deaths.
I believe, like King Leoric, who could not fully be controlled by a weakened Diablo due to his mental fortitude and piety, that the unyielding good in Griswold was far too strong for a floozy such as Andariel to overcome, no matter her allure or power. But, as they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And in terms of Andariel's revenge, when the warrior had all the villagers killed as he departed Tristram, Andariel could finally hollow out the remains of the blacksmith, feeding on his anguish as she desired, now having Griswold as a powerful puppet, forced to fell any who came near his beloved Tristram. A truly dark fate for the blacksmith. That is until the heroes of Diablo 2 put an end to the blasphemous charade, and eventually the evil temptress herself, hopefully giving Griswold's soul some modicum of peace. But his story doesn't end there. While many callbacks to Griswold through text and weaponry appear later in the series, the only armor set found in Diablo 2 linked to Griswold is my favourite clue that perhaps Griswold had his own final, holy retribution against the Primes, even after death. The armor set is called Griswold's Legacy, and it should be noted the set is designed for the Paladin specifically. However, any class can wear the items in the set except for Griswold's Honor, a shield which only the Paladin can don to complete the set. It should also be noted the set imparts its own unique and purely aesthetic aura. Now, I like to believe this was what the Paladin had donned when the party had felled Andariel and then the three, as Diablo himself once again saw Griswold's handiwork as a holy Paladin bathed in a resplendent aura bashed his brains in. Now, Diablo 4 of course goes on record to tell the Paladin's eventual fate, and it does hamper this dream somewhat, but I don't know if it counts to all of the people who are lore lovers from Diablo 1 or 2. Let me know if you agree in the comments, and if you want to learn of the Paladin's final fate, as he eventually gave his life felling one of the 3 primevals, check out the video linked on screen. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, Traveller.
Demons that assume the form of beautiful women, you say? That's horrible. Thank the light that you solved this mystery before any more of our men were lured to their deaths. Thank you for keeping us safe from the powers of darkness once again.